It is May 24th, the day after my birthday, and nobody has to sing, please. But I'm a day older, and here we are again in open hours, and it is a good day to check back in with Dave on some recent blog posts that he sent out. One about the Travis CI integration for our GitHub sources, and also the YUIDoc version 0.3.0. Um, so Eric F is here with me, and Dave is here with me, and we've got a couple other folks in the channel. So let's get to talking about some stuff. Before we get into the usual, before we get into the details about what's going on with these, with YUIDoc and Travis, just some interesting news and current events. We have Yahoo just launched a new browser, I guess. How would you describe it, Eric? Is it technically considered a new browser, or is it just a plugin? There are a few different
Well,
parts to it.
I think the apps for the mobile for iOS would be a browser, but I guess an extension for the desktop browsers.
Right. So it's Yahoo Access. I should go and find that actually. Yahoo Access. Hey, look at that. So yeah, so this fancy little thing was built on Mojito, so that was pretty awesome. And Carity was part of that, and I would like to get him on Open Hours to discuss some of the internals of building out the app on the Mojito platform, and where that intersects with YUI, and just to get a chance to go over that product, because it looks pretty interesting actually. It seems to have gotten some pretty good feedback in the press and the public, and folks that have poked at it seem to appreciate it. There was certainly the snafu I'm sure everybody's heard about with the cert that was included in the extensions. So we'll just hand wave past that little deal and focus on the product itself. But so that's one bit of information. The other bit of information that's new and interesting is that the book, the YUI 3 cookbook, is on its way to the printers right now. So for lovers of dead trees, that's some dead trees put to good use. And let's see, anything else, Eric, that you can think about that's going on recently?
No, not really.
All right. Well, there's certainly some interesting conversations going on over in the forum that you've been subject to these last couple of days, it seems. You've been living half your life in the forums replying to whiteout app questions, and there was
I
another
have.
thread that you were chasing down as well. But those are certainly interesting threads that if anyone wants to participate in, it would be
Yeah,
good to get some additional perspective.
Mark in the forums, I'm not sure what his last name is, tends to create these interesting topics that tend to get a lot of attention. So it's good that he starts them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I really appreciate it when folks that are dealing with real world issues, and they're reaching the boundaries of what the library might provide, either at all or maybe just sort of easy solutions out of the box. So when people start to encounter those sorts of edge cases, then it's really good to hear their feedback so that we can get some real world interaction with saying, we've reached the breaking point, and so we can use their feedback to help guide the direction to solve those problems, which will help us create the products, re-architect things internally, or just architect things internally to support scales and code scaling up to that level, or code that solves those sorts of use cases. We can analyze whether or not those are the sorts of use cases that are common enough that we want to be allocating time and maybe bundling up solutions for going forward. So those sorts of conversations are really fantastic. Sometimes they can get a little dramatic, and certainly some opinions can flare, but I think that all in all, having those discussions is more valuable than any sort of emotional engagement that might happen in the moment. So passing the knee jerking, good to have that sort of stuff going on in the forums. So that's really cool. Hey, Reed's joining us too. Fantastic. Thanks for coming in, Reed. Dave, you all set up?
Yep, I'm good to go.
Fantastic. So the two big things we want to go over, and I want to give Dave as much time as possible to talk about the deets here, is YUIDoc and the long list of reasons that it is totally awesome, and why this version is such a huge improvement from the previous version, and sort of the change up that we did from the previous YUIDoc version into the version now on Node.js, and then completely unrelated awesome about integrating with Travis and what it actually means to integrate with Travis and sort of the techniques and how they're actually useful, or how Travis maybe as a product itself is useful outside of the context specifically for YUI, and maybe some of the learnings that we've gotten when setting this up that might also be useful in your own applications. So, Dave, you might, I'll just pass it over to you to let you share your screen, and we can get talking about whichever you want to talk about first.
All right. You guys got it?
I see something. I see black. Uh-oh. I hope this isn't a plugin update issue. Nope. Still black.
Yeah,
Still
we're just seeing like a black box that's outlining the window but not showing any of its contents.
All right. Let's try that.
Yeah, bigger black box.
Full screen black box. Yeah, it's probably a plugin issue for whatever reason with Lion. I mean, I guess one of us could share our screen and you could tell us where to go. I guess we don't get to see some of the command line stuff if you're going to do any of that.
I won't do any command line stuff. We can actually just stick with the browser.
Cool. Then I'll turn on my screen sharing, and we can just do. You can just navigate me like a little puppet. All right. So where do you want to start?
We want to start with We'll start with YUIDoc.
All right.
And if you just go to the blog post, that'll work.
Yep, here we are.
Okay, so the first really big thing about YUIDoc's release is that it is all 100% hosted on GitHub. So we're actually going to be using the GitHub issues, the wiki. I'm actually using GitHub Pages to host my own API docs. So it's actually a fully functional open source project with no ties to anything else.
Yeah, standalone thing. So
so that's on GitHub Pages there,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so you can see the URL is yui.github.com/yuidoc.
Yep. Pasted in the chat. So, and yeah, so you have the getting started and some example stuff.
Yeah, so I'm using Celic to generate all of my documentation, and of course using YUIDoc to generate the API docs for it. Of course.
Right. Of course.
So that's the really huge part of open sourcing it the way I did, was that it's all 100% hosted on GitHub with their issues, their wikis, their pages. So it feels more like a real open source project. I'm also not doing like milestone-y product managey type crap. I've already pushed 9 releases since we open sourced this thing last week.
Oh, so what version are we on now? 0.3.9?
Yep.
Yeah, 0.3.9. Look at that.
Yeah, so I've already pushed 9 versions, 9 updates. I've had 4 pull requests and about 15 bugs submitted.
Nice.
And
In
they've been
a matter of days.
hammered out and fixed and deployed in real time. I mean, within 15, 20 minutes after getting requests, I'm bundling and pushing a new version.
Yeah, that's nice.
And as of this morning, our API docs on YUILibrary.com is running generated documentation from 0.3.9.
Excellent. So dog fooding as well, always good.
Exactly. So if you scroll down a little bit, we can see some of the really badass features that have been added to this version. So the live previews is one of the biggest things that people love, and that's the built-in server.
Mm-hmm.
So you can fire up YUIDoc as a server on top of your source files and browse your rendered API docs in real time. You can also change them and reload the page and see that it's been modified on the fly. So there's no more build time.
This is a pattern that we've really started to adopt with the various other little support products that we've been doing. So Celic has this, and YUIDoc has this, and I'm forgetting one. Oh, the YUI coverage tool.
Yeah,
has that as well of some sort. So that is so big. I absolutely love that, and not having to go through any regeneration of stuff. Just modify stuff and look at it. So nice.
Yeah, so the second really big thing is the markdown support in the code comments. People really, really love that. Since this blog post, I've actually added another feature that people are really ranting and raving about, and that's the ability to use handlebars code inside of your API documentation comments.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you can include partials and things like that? Or conditionals?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, you can do that inside of the comments themselves, and you can also supply YUIDoc with a custom set of handlebar helpers to create your own. So if you jump over to your next tab to the actual documentation.
Yeah.
And then using YUIDoc right underneath user guides. Right there. Yep. All the way to the bottom.
All right.
Oh, actually, back it up one. Sorry, wrong page.
Oh, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so back it up one. It's under syntax reference.
There we go.
Yeah, so all the way to the very bottom. So one thing I'd like to point out as we're going through this is that you can see that Evan did all of my documentation. So he went through and changed my redneck English into a really, really good documentation.
We love Evan.
Evan's the guy who's writing the YUI, who wrote the YUI3 cookbook. So
right.
You'll get to see more of that good writing.
And is sanity checking some of our user guides.
Yeah. All right, if you scroll up one more block.
There has to be some sort of, there's got to be a yo dog joke in here somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, so here is showing how you could use the built-in handlebars inside of your documentation to where you can cross-link between different modules and classes and methods.
It's different modules and classes and methods.
So what context are the documents or the documentation passed? Like, is there certain placeholder variables that you can just use out of the box? Like, if you wanted to repeat the name of the module everywhere or something? Or? Yeah.
So you get the full you get full access to whatever it's rendering. So if you're rendering that class, you'll get the entire class and all of its metadata.
Wow.
And then I've got a couple of built-in helpers that I use in the templates, which is this crosslink method and crosslink module. You can also access those. So you can crosslink yourself to classes or classes to a module or classes to a method or to an actual module. So all of those are available inside of your documentation block as well.
Nice. That's excellent.
Well, what takes that to the next level is if you look at the block right below where you're at, you can actually supply YUIDoc with a link to a JavaScript file that exports an object with a name and a function, and that name will become your helper method.
So you're
so
exporting
now
Dav Glass.
so now it's a block helper. So now you can pass whatever you want to inside of it and do your own thing. So at that point, you can actually extend the theme without having to even rewrite the theme. You can just add new things to it. Like for example, if you were documenting functions that call the web service, you could actually have a helper in there that wrote in links that points to your production web server response objects.
That's especially nice for having a few single things that are common to reference throughout your documentation. You can change that in one place and then not have to update tons and tons of files.
Yeah.
So then what you commit to source is just the handlebar syntax. So you don't have to worry about if you still want to have a break at 80 characters or doing any of that stuff, you can still do it. You don't have to worry about it getting exploded in your source code.
Right. Yep.
Is there a way to configure helper files in some sort of global config so you don't have to specify to the command line just yet, or is that?
Everything inside the command line has always been supported in the YUIDoc.json file.
Excellent.
So any command that you can pass to the command line will override whatever YUIDoc finds in the YUIDoc.json file.
So that's talked about in using YUIDoc, I imagine, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So there's the full list of commands, but then below that we've got the YUIDoc.json file. So anything in here is the defaults, and then if you pass anything at the command line, it will override only that thing that you passed.
Okay. Yeah. So you'll be able to configure in your YUIDoc.json file. You can configure just helpers to point to your thing, and then.
Yeah. So then if you look at this one here, just go all the way back down to the bottom.
Sure.
This is another big feature of YUIDoc is that options external data. You see. That YUIDoc is smart enough that if you give it an external data, which is the data.json file that another YUIDoc instance created, it'll go out and fetch that, and it will merge it in as an external item. So, for example, YUIDoc uses YUI under the hood. So if you go back up and go to the API documentation for YUIDoc, all the way to the top.
All the way to the top.
Yeah, right-hand side, navigation, API docs. There you go. So, for example, when we're rendering the API docs here, if you go over and look at the doc parser class, the doc parser class actually extends base. So you can see that all of the information from base is actually in this list. So the add adders, the add adder, all of that stuff comes from base, from the YUI3 source tree. And when you click on them, it should just take you over to the methods and show you everything that's inside of that method. This is everything that belongs to it. But when you actually click, you can see it's also coming from attribute core. If you click that, it's going to take you over to YUILibrary.com, to the exact place that you got your data. So it intermingles your data between two different documentation systems at the same time. Now that data external link can also be an array. So you can give it an array of places to go get it. So for example, if you're working on a gallery module, you can actually have your documentation for your gallery module pull data from somebody else's gallery module that also pulls data from YUI library.
Let's see, where was I?
All the way at the bottom.
Yep, external data.
Yeah, so that data key can either be a string or an array of URLs. Okay.
So what else goes in external? Is it right now it's just data?
Right now it's just data, yeah.
Okay.
So eventually I want to add some extra keys on how it mixes the data, because right now it mixes the data and flags it as being external so that when you go to click on it, it takes you to the URL and formats the URL and everything properly. But eventually I would like it to also be able to import all of that documentation into your own so it doesn't have to go anywhere.
That seems
So
like
for example, if I'm building something that's based on this specific version of this other item, I want that version's API documentation and not the documentation that's live right now.
That. Yeah.
It's kind of like npm shrink wrap in a way.
Yeah.
Or dependency data.
Yeah, so there's the little things in there that I want to do. I just didn't do it yet because this is the most common use case. And YUIDoc's data.json file doesn't quite support everything that it needs to do that, especially the source for the files that it's pulling.
How do you mean?
Well, the data.json file doesn't keep the actual source files from the item that it parsed.
Okay.
It keeps the parse data. So in order to show you syntax highlighted source in your page, I have to get those files from somewhere.
I guess it wanted to
because you link over, to the actual file view and you see the line number and the method of whatever, where this item was called. So I don't have access to that data inside of here because that would make this file way bigger than what it already is.
Right. Yeah.
So there's some technical things I have to figure out before I can allow being able to mix the data together or merge it together instead of just mixing it and augmenting it a little.
Yeah, this is such a great feature to have. I remember the original Python version of YUIDoc. When using it to document something, and then if I was like, one of the parameters was it took a YUI node instance, there is no way to link it back to the y.nodes documentation. So having this is so nice to be able to chain effectively these documentation things for different components so that, like you were saying, gallery modules can point back to the main YUI API docs when they need to, and just happen automatically by putting that external data in there. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, John Lindell's been experimenting with a lot of his gallery modules, and he's gotten several of them to mix together, so he can have one gallery module that depends on two others and YUI. So he puts all three of the JSON files in, and everything just magically clicks and works.
Nice.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
So Dave,
using it as intended, and it is working as intended. That's good. So potentially you can also use this to do, well, I guess there's no external data.json file for something like MDC, right?
Right.
Or MDN. Yeah. So, but we do have support for that.
Right. So we do cross-link any natives in the language across too. So when you say something's an object or something is an array or a string or function like that, we will cross-link that over to Mozilla's documentation too.
So that I guess is the one part where YUIDoc makes the assumption that the code is JavaScript instead of some other language, because otherwise it's completely language agnostic, right? Yeah,
and that's also an opt-in option, so you actually have to tell YUIDoc to link natives.
Oh, okay.
And all of those natives are exposed on the YUIDoc object, so if you required it yourself and wrote your own quick little wrapper, you could change all those native linking with no problem.
Oh, nice. So it's all configurable.
Yeah, because YUIDoc is fully exportable too, so you can require that as a node module and use it just bits and pieces or do some other things with it too.
Right, I saw the ability to do the export stuff, and I was wondering how that, what an example of that might be where you're requiring it and using it or in piecemeal or something like that. Is that in this one or is this in the other one?
No, it's in the API docs. So if you scroll up to the API docs, it should be under the YUIDoc module.
In here? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so say you wanted to only get the JSON out of it, you could run that and get the JSON data and not actually do any of the building or template manipulation.
Sure. Sure. So you're just parsing out the stuff and just want to get the raw data. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or say you have your own templating system, so you wanted to do this, and then you wanted to post-process that JSON and munge it into whatever you need, and then
Mhm.
pass it to your documentation system.
Mhm.
So all of that works there as you would expect it to. So the other thing is too is that the index file, the command line runner, is extremely nimble. So you could really copy that and put 2 or 3 steps in between what it's already doing to modify anything that you want on the fly. So it's really easy to bake your own little command line tool with it and have it do all kinds of weird things.
Oh, I see. So you're talking about how the actual command line is the command line available or shown in here anywhere?
If you look under, no, go back to the API docs because the
Sure.
source files are in the API docs.
Okay.
And it's under CLI.
Ah. Right. So yeah.
So you can see it's not doing a whole lot. It's just mashing together a few things and firing up different things. So you can see that you can parse the JSON and then you can pass it to then it passes it to Builder. So at that point on line 38, you could do whatever you wanted to that JSON file to modify whatever you wanted.
Mhm.
And we're talking, there's only 40 some odd lines there.
Right.
If you
Insert
take out
or
the documentation at
customization
the
right
top.
here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
or you could do it before, you could do it after, you could do it after the builder's done compiling, you could do whatever you want.
So then the builder compile is doing what? This is where the documentation, the actual HTML pages are being generated from, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
then Celic is happening under the hood inside of here.
Well, the Celic is not technically under there, just some of Celic's utilities are under there.
Oh, all right.
Because YUIDoc just uses Y.handlebars under the
Yeah.
hood.
Okay.
So it does everything on its own, but there's a few utilities that were borrowed from Celic that are inside that doc builder.
So Celic isn't a requirement of YUIDoc then?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So we just have handlebars, but handlebars is a requirement of YUIDoc.
Well, YUI is a requirement of YUIDoc, and handlebars is inside of YUI.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because the entire thing is written in YUI, so everything that you have on that Y dot, you have full access to anything in YUI, so you can do whatever you want at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Very cool. So let's go back to the list of features here. If there was anything else that we wanted to call out. So we've got the cross-platform, or the external data mixing.
Yep, the cross-linking JSON-based configuration. The theming support is actually kind of cool if you want to deal with that. YUIDoc has a built-in theme, but it's only an HTML theme, so you could theoretically write a markdown theme that would generate markdown documentation. Or you could, any other language that you want to render the thing in, you could build your own theme and use handlebars under the hood to write all this stuff out.
Yeah,
that's
the
nicety
just
about
another export
separating
format.
Right. So that's basically, the reason I went with the theming like it is that it's easy to really just replace those .handlebars files and have it output whatever you want it to output. And one of the other niceties with the theming is that you don't have to copy the entire theme if you just want to replace like the header.
Mm-hmm.
The way YUIDoc works is when it goes to find its partials, it looks in itself first to get everything it needs, and then it goes to your theme directory and applies whatever's there. So if you only want to modify one thing, you only have to modify one custom theme file. You don't have to copy the entire theme directory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is handy, when there's 10 or 15, templates. You don't want to keep track of those all the time.
Right. Or just making style changes or something like that. All you need to do is modify some CSS files independently.
Yep.
Yeah. Right on. So then the cross-platform installation, what do you mean here? We're talking about...
It works on Windows, Mac, and Linux with one command: npm install YUIDoc.js. That's it.
Anywhere npm works, it also works. That's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah, as long as Node runs, it'll run.
Yep. It's sort of one of those documentation, like YUIDoc seems like one of those unsung heroes of front-end development, right? You want to making sure that all of your stuff is well documented, and having tools like this that make it easy to not only create documentation, keep it maintained, and easy to update, easy to see, and easy to deploy. So let's say you're not developing it. So you're doing individual updates in server mode, and you're all done making your updates. You've committed your doc source files and things like that. And now you're going to be running YUIDoc in non-server mode, and it's just generating a bunch of output, and you would just commit those generated source files out into commit those generated source files into your repo and deploy them onto your site. Nothing fancy, right? It's all local relative URLs and stuff internally, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it'll run anywhere. No matter where you drop it, it'll run.
Yep.
It's all just static HTML files.
That's the way we like it. All right. So anything else to share about this one?
No, I mean, I pretty much covered most of it in the blog article and stuff like that, but I just wanted to show the new stuff that I've done since then.
Yeah. The handlebars.
If it's been a day since you were working with one of the tools Dave works on, then you should just do, npm update and get the latest version, because something good has been added or a bug has been fixed.
Yeah, I think it might be worth checking the site first to see what version it is. Let's see what's new and interesting. Do you have an ongoing change log or anything new and hot and all that sort of thing?
No, actually, that's next on my list, is to put a change log in. I haven't, because I've just been iterating so fast on it that it would just slow me down.
And also you have some code to do for YUI.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. So I'm getting it to that point. I just haven't. I've just been iterating so fast that anytime a bug has come in, I've just tried to get it fixed and get it up there as fast as I can, so nobody's stopped. If they're trying to use it, I want them to be able to use it as fast as they can.
So Reed's asking if we can create our own data.json to include Node.js API links and inherited methods.
You could probably do that.
Oh, yeah, I can. Your audio's on.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, because I wouldn't see why you wouldn't be able to if you just handcrafted
file
JSON.
That as a request.
JSON, right?
File that as a request, and maybe I'll make one and put it in there as default support.
Okay.
So I don't forget it. I've got like 4 meetings today.
Okay, good.
Reed, you're coming through now? All right, there you are.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool. No, I just see all this stuff happening with the gallery stuff, and I use a lot of Node.js stuff in my own apps. So yeah, I'll check out the syntax and see. I mean, it's not really a big deal. I'm just kind of curious because it's already really powerful for gallery stuff and for things that are documented with YUIDoc. So
yeah, I think Rita, I think you really did call it there, that there's huge value in this just generally, but I think in terms of like YUI and YUI contributors, using YUIDoc for gallery contributions is like an easy win. And not only is it an easy win because it's just npm install, but it also helps influence folks that are going to be writing gallery modules to include the API.doc comments in there. And if the barrier to entry for writing good documentation is as close to zero as one could imagine, then we end up with a much higher quality gallery that, each of the modules that are included in the gallery, or many more of the modules that are included in the gallery are including those documentations and the link to well-formed documentation, using the same tool so it looks and feels the same as browsing through the documentation otherwise. and with the external links pointing into the YUI library data.json file, then the cross-linking happening from their API docs into the core API docs sort of seamlessly. I think that this adds a lot of value for gallery contributors as a fairly simple and straightforward next step after creating the thing, or if you're good about it, writing the documentation as you're creating the thing. But building the module out and testing it, but if it's so incredibly easy to also then have a documentation server running on this stuff and be able to generate those docs and push them up to wherever it is you want to host them. It's easy enough to host them up on GitHub Pages, for example.
Yeah, well, eventually Gallery will support Celic and YUIDoc documentation generation.
Just out of the box, you bring in a gallery module, and if it has docs, then we'll
generate it. Yeah.
And we'll just be linking those from the gallery pages?
Not quite ready to talk about that part yet. But the idea is that the closer that they can get a gallery module to the way one of our modules works when it comes to documentation, testing, and API docs, we will run those things during the gallery build eventually. I actually have my list here of how long it's going to take me to do it. But if they have a test directory inside their gallery module, we're going to run their tests inside of the system at the same time we run ours. And if they fail, they do not get pushed. And if they have a docs directory, we'll run Celic on it. And if they have API docs in their JS, we will run API documentation on it. How we're going to mix that in yet, not sure, but we will eventually.
So then, speaking of obvious segues, if they're going to be pushing tests in there, and we're going to be running those tests and evaluating whether or not it fails, we'll be using a system like Travis, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because we're sure as hell not going to be doing that manually on all of the gallery modules.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll eventually have it on Travis and in our internal Hudson, because right now we're actually running all of our tests twice. So internally we run it per build on Hudson for the corporate things that we have to do, but we're also running it after that on Travis so that the world can see everything that we're testing every time that we do a build. So Travis is awesome. If you guys haven't used Travis, you should really use Travis. You should try to at least look at it. If you go to that search box there, Luke, just type YUI into that search box.
Where is it? There you go.
So you'll see most of our projects pop up there. So we've got YUI, YUI3, we've got my YUI3, we've got YUIDoc, and Yeti. Those things are all being tested on Travis every time that we push. Yeah, so we get to see a failed build. I'm testing on Node 7, so we're testing actually 3 versions of Node every time we push.
Nice.
If you go to the build history,
this is 3 versions of Node using 3 versions of Node, each running Phantom.js. So testing against WebKit and those.
Not just Phantom. They're also running native Node tests. So the idea is that a lot of our core system, anything inside of global, loader, lang, anything that is pure JavaScript can be run inside of Node all the time and should be run inside of Node all the time. That way we can ensure that all of our regular JavaScript utilities fully function inside of the Node.js environment. So if somebody is using our stuff like base, attribute, custom event, or anything like that, that they can ensure that it's going to work as expected. So what I've done is I've actually broken our tests out into 2 different things. So you've got one set of tests that are pure JavaScript related tests. They have no DOM, no requirement for any kind of browser. They're just straight up JavaScript tests. And then the second half are all of our normal tests. So what we've done is we've built when this thing starts to run its tests, it actually runs all of those JavaScript tests inside of Node. So it actually fires up YUI test, does a require, and grabs those things and runs these thousands of tests. And then if all of them pass, then it fires up Phantom.js and runs through our batch of 151 test files.
Mm. Right.
So we're getting
a lot of work.
Right. So we're getting the best of both worlds. We get all of our Node.js testing, and we get headless browser-based testing at the same time.
Right.
And then eventually, we'll drop the Phantom out of it, and we'll put a Yeti call in there and have Yeti do it all.
Yeah, that's going to be sweet.
Yeah.
So, Reed, since you're on the line, if either Reed or Dave, if you want to talk about how that's going to work and what it actually means to replace a Phantom call with a Yeti call.
Well, right now it's a one-liner because I'm using my Grover command that actually runs all those Phantom.js. So we would basically just swap out the Grover command for a Yeti command and be done with it.
Yep, that's pretty much how that's going to work.
And what will happen is the Yeti command is then going to redirect, or it's going to contact a test cluster or something like that, right?
Yeah,
which are actually
so that isn't going to be on Travis necessarily. It doesn't have to be. So when Yeti started in Travis, it can be talking to, say, a server Dave hosts, for example, that has, or Yeti Hub, that has all these browsers connected to it, all of our A-grade browsers. So Travis is the thing that will run that. We can even have some of Travis's own, either Phantom or they have a Firefox, I think, that we could use that they support too, and we could have that all added to one Yeti system that we use for Travis testing. So, and then we're also going to share that with the rest of our team, right? Being able to hit the same Yeti hub to do their pre-commit testing too. So.
Nice. So then you will we'll have pre-commit testing for isolated changes, for just running like specific tests or something, not necessarily full library test suites, for pre-commit time, and then we push into master, and that's going to get picked up by Travis, and then Travis just relays back to Yeti with the full test suite, right? So you get the full build coverage across all of the browsers that you're doing, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you
so
wire
right
it
now,
up once and profit like crazy.
Yeah. Well, right now, YUIDoc, Yeti, YUI 3, and a few of my own tools are running against Travis every single time that we push. And every one of those also has the badass pull request support that Travis has too. Travis came up with this thing called the pull request support. If you look in the build history, you can actually kind of see that those aren't all builds that we've done. They're actually automated builds that come in from the pull request support.
So yeah, okay. So whenever anybody issues a pull request against the repo on GitHub, then Travis is going to hook into that, catch it, run the version of the code with that pull request merged, see if it passes or fails, and report back.
Yes.
And
yeah. So there's a couple of little there's one minor problem with that at the moment, and that's that a lot of our pull requests, people are actually doing the right thing and they're separating their source and their build files, but they're not actually committing the build files. So the test says it passes, but it doesn't technically pass because it was never built. And because
okay,
our
so
build
pull requests should include the build files?
Well, they should in a different commit. So we need to make sure that there's a commit for source and then there's a commit for build.
Okay.
And the only reason we have to do that is that our full library build just takes so freaking long. I mean, these things already take 15 minutes to run all these tests. We don't want to add on another 15 minutes for it to build the entire library every time. So to ensure that their tests or their pull requests are actually passing, it needs to have a built copy of the file that it's testing, or it's not going to actually test anything. It could say it passes, but it doesn't matter.
So there's a takeaway for contributors that are issuing pull requests to have a source commit separate from a build commit, but definitely do include the build files, the generated build files, in your pull requests.
Yep. And ensure that your tests are in there too. That way, when it runs it, it's going to run against your tests, against your build, and everything.
What's everyone's typical pattern of commits in terms of source changes in test files? Do you tend to put the test file updates in the same commit as the source changes, or in separate commits?
I usually do separate because I actually will usually commit my test first and watch it break, and then commit my source changes to watch it get fixed, and then commit my build when I'm done.
Yeah, I guess I do that locally, but I don't actually take the step of doing the commit before I change the source to make it pass. I add the test to see it fail, and then change the source to make it pass, and then just commit them both at the same time. Maybe I should separate it out into separate commits. I don't know what anyone else on the line does.
I'm just a big fan of really, really tiny commits.
Yeah.
That's how you get MVP on Master Branch.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think MVP is measured by number of commits, and so that's a fine one. I don't know how it does its metrics, but
yeah, so the whole goal of putting Travis up here was to show people that, to give them the numbers. I mean, a lot of people didn't know that our library was as well tested as what it is. They didn't realize that we had, several thousand tests that we run all the time. And they don't realize either that if that test fails inside of Hudson on our deployment, that they just don't see the changes.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't know that we don't even push it to GitHub if those tests do not pass.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we have plenty of test coverage, but still need plenty more.
Yeah.
No shortage of tests, or no shortage of need for tests, I guess. So now going back to just talking about purely Travis, though, the process for setting up Travis or linking it up to a GitHub account is fairly self-explanatory, I'm assuming?
It is dead simple, especially if you're writing simple things. Now, our YUI 3 build is a little more complicated than what most builds are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not most builds, but I mean, if you're building just a simple like Node.js app, and you have all your tests that execute under npm test, then it's a one file add, and that's it. You just put one file in, and you tell Travis to pick up your changes, and you're done.
So I posted that. There's a link there for a simple. That's just what that does is just run npm test for the Yeti project. So the YUI one will be a little bit different. So you'll see what's going to be in common, I think, with what the YUI project will do is the before script stuff, which Dave can explain. But
yeah, so here we've got the language tells us that we're doing a Node.js project, so that's going to assume npm installs and npm tests and everything that requires Node, because Travis supports multiple languages. They support Ruby, PHP, Java, all this stuff. So we have to tell it we're going to use Node.js. The line right underneath that is what versions of Node.js we're going to test on. So in Yeti, Read is only testing against the 0.6 branch, and it's the latest. And Travis also allows us to inject, replace any step in its system from beginning to end for testing. So they have a before script, an after script. They have an install script. They have a test script. So these are the sections of the build that it runs as it goes through. So what he's doing here is he's saying before you start doing anything, export this display, start up the virtual frame buffer, and then fire up and then print the phantom version so he can see it in the log file, and then it's just going to run npm install, npm test, and run its stuff.
So this is largely a customization for the Travis logs, then? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, that bottom line is, line 8 is, line 6 and 7 is actually firing up a headless version. It's not really a headless version of Firefox, but it's a GUI-less version of Firefox. So it's a virtual frame buffer, so it fires up an X Windows session with Firefox in it that isn't attached to a monitor.
Okay.
It's like really geeky stuff that I love. But anyway, this way he can actually spawn up and test a local version of Firefox that's running on the Travis build machine and not somewhere else.
Right. And then as far as wiring that the repo up to Travis, it's just a matter of creating an account on Travis, and they have an interface to say, point me at your GitHub repos and
yeah. So when you
whatever.
up there in the top corner, you can sign in with GitHub, and when you sign in with GitHub, it does an OAuth connection over, lets you authorize it, and when it comes back, it shows you a list of your projects that you have, and it's basically flip this bit.
Nice.
And it turns it on. It's very, very simple.
Ding. Look at that. And
Yep.
now I am testing.
Yeah, so it would test anytime you push to your YUI3 repo.
Nice.
Yeah, so if you go back to the GitHub source over to where Yeti's at, change that to YUI3 up at the top instead of Yeti in the URL.
Oh, okay.
So it'll show YUI3's Travis ML.
Yep.
And you'll see ours is much more complicated. It actually fires off 3 different sets of 3 different scripts on their own. So ours, we're testing on node 4, 6, and 7. We're only testing when you push to master. So we don't want to push. We don't want to test when you're pushing to live docs or something like that, because we're not actually putting code in there. We shouldn't be anyway. And so here we got the before script, we've got the install script and the test script. Now these are all custom scripts that I wrote to fully test our entire system. So like the before script, the NPM package for YUI3 is actually, it has to be built. So it doesn't work directly out of source, you actually have to build the thing. So in the before script, I actually run our ant commands and stuff to build these packages and set up all the Node.js stuff in the right places and install everything it needs to install. And then I run our custom test script, which runs through and does a few extra things too. They're all in the source tree under source common Travis.
Right, as you can see.
Yeah. So they're really, really customized for exactly how we need to run our tests, because you can't just run npm test in our package directory, because we have to do pre-building, we have to do installing, and we have to do the pre-building before we can do the installing. We got to create some symlinks, you know.
Yeah, but all the same, it's a testament to the flexibility of Travis to support the systems that you have.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we are running pretty close on time here. Are there any last little bits of wisdom that you want to impart? Any questions in chat that you want to ask before we sign off?
Well, my last bit of wisdom would be, if you like Travis, donate to him, because it's awesome.
Yeah, that's very true.
And they should fix their URLs.
Yes, they should. Well, the site needs some love, because you can't sit on this page for too long. Because of all the stuff going on over on that left-hand side, it'll kill it.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed it kept refreshing, but wasn't sure if that was causing any damage.
I think it was just changing the ad over on the sponsors area, too. Maybe that's what you saw.
Yeah, there it is.
Or yeah, maybe there it is.
Yep. Cool. Well, Dave, thanks for spending a little time and wasting a good hour's worth of productivity that you could have been versioning it up to 0.3.10 or 11 or 12 by now, or getting some work done on the YUI core and stuff like that. Do you have any secret projects that you want out that you have in store for upcoming stuff? Anything that isn't mentioned on the blog recently, or?
Nothing that I can speak of yet.
Okay. All right.
I like to keep everybody on their toes.
All right. Well, we look forward to the next open hours. We could show your next awesome development. And Eric, anything else from you?
No, I think.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for connecting up, and we'll be having another open hours next week. I might be able to get Carity. Hopefully, I'll be able to get Carity on the horn about Access, and otherwise we have a couple other ideas. But we should be sending out that invite early on. And if you have any questions or comments you want to feed back, then you know where to find us. We're on IRC. We have our YUI forums, and of course you can find us on Twitter at YUI Library, and
GitHub.
otherwise, and GitHub, of course, yeah. And so, yeah. So until next week, I guess we will sign off, and we will see you again soon.